I was very disappointed that the interview you gave on Sunday wasn't uploaded to YouTube. So because of that, I'd like you to fill in folks what you said that they need to hear.
Well, he asked me what I thought about Andrew McCabe, and I'm afraid I went off for a couple minutes like an atomic bomb. And poor Lionel said, it blew his mind. So it's possible he'll never post it because I said then what I'm about to say now, but I'm going to say it a little bit nicer now because I know I have a little more time. So here's what I said. What do I think of Andrew McCabe? That treasonous person should be immediately locked up, not be fired. And the reason is, and then I started to give the reasons, and those reasons are as follows. Andrew McCabe led, first off, he was a witness in the Mueller investigation. He was the person who was involved in the Clinton email scandal that exonerated her. He was the one who helped rewrite Comey's exoneration. He was the one in charge of Peter Strzok and Lisa Page, who had 50,000 text messages under his nose and didn't stop it. That alone is a security violation. They should both be fired for it. They weren't. They were simply moved to a new office. So McCabe was also in charge of connecting with the Department of Justice National Security Division, and all three of those people are gone. They all quit. They jumped ship. James Baker jumped ship from underneath McCabe's control. He was the chief counsel for the FBI. James Rybicki jumped ship. Comey got fired. I mean, everyone who was working with McCabe is corrupt, first off. And so he had his fingers in everything. So when we talk about the George Papadopoulos counterintelligence investigation of Trump that turned into the Trump operation, that turned into the secret society, that turned into the Mueller investigation, or the operation to impeach, then the Mueller investigation, this still continues from July 2016. How about the 4 different Clinton Foundation investigations? Who was in charge of those? Oh, that would be, that's right, Andrew McCabe. Who was in charge of looking into the political corruption investigation for the FBI in Virginia against Terry McAuliffe? Oh, that would be Andrew McCabe. Oh, that's right, Terry McAuliffe is a founding board member of the Clinton Foundation. And, oh, that's right, Andrew McCabe's wife, Jill McCabe, ran for Senate in 2015 with money given from Terry McAuliffe's a political PAC in Virginia, which is part of the corruption that McCabe was supposed to be investigating, and $250,000 from Hillary Clinton herself from her victory campaign, her PC, her super PAC, gave to Jill McCabe. So as Andrew McCabe was investigating not only 4 different investigations on Hillary Clinton, but also her email security, espionage, whatever you want to call it, the worst in American history, she got exonerated on all of those. Notice we never heard what happened in any of those investigations. They just kind of disappeared. That was Andrew McCabe. Now, let's also think really clearly. Who is Andrew McCabe? He was getting groomed to be Comey's replacement when Comey plays musical chairs and leaves after his term. It was to be Andrew McCabe's turn after that. Why? He'd been brought up through the ranks. He wasn't there when Rosenstein, Mueller, and Comey started their cabal, but he joined them pretty quickly thereafter, and for certainly the last 15 years or so, he's been running cover for them. He was, in fact, the person at the FBI in charge of the Russian investigation into Uranium One. Oh, that's right. Uranium One is connected to Hillary Clinton. $145 million we know was paid directly to her. No investigation. Then we have the conviction against the Russian oligarch who ran 10M, the Russian takeover of U.S. uranium in America, which went on for 10 years. Who was in charge of that investigation? Oh, that's right, Andrew McCabe. Oh, how about the investigation into him as a leaker, which through the sex texts, which they thought they cleaned up pretty good, it clearly shows that they were working for Andy. That would be Strzok and Page. The lovers were working for Andy under his nose, and they were admitting that they leaked. And they were even responding to how quickly their leaks get out and whether they should do it the normal way. And Did you tell Andy? And, well, let's meet in Andy's office. And Andy. Okay? That's Andrew McCabe. Andrew McCabe was second in charge. He knew everything that was going on. He knew the 28 treasonous crimes of Comey. So when we go on and on about Comey, add that to McCabe. He was complicit in all of that. And when Comey comes back and says that he wrote down his notes, that's because Mueller and Comey years ago under Ashcroft fought over the issue of whether or not a 302 could be considered evidence. And it is. A federal FBI agent or DOJ attorney general, after they when they were supposed to write a field report directly at the moment that they're there. No, these guys write field reports, they write 302s later, and then they doctor them up. So he was being investigated for that, and he not only doctored his, he also told others to doctor. What else was McCabe charged with? McCabe was also charged with the fact that he told everyone at the FBI, back off of Anthony Weiner's laptop. They went and confiscated his laptop from the New York Police Department and hid it, and he is on record stating he was not going to investigate it until after the election to make sure that there was no more conflicts with Hillary Clinton, because he had just got through exonerating her, for heaven's sakes, and lying and he went to Comey's exoneration written long before McCabe struck. Remember, we said from the beginning all this was going on. We told everyone before anyone ever said a word that there was a counterintelligence investigation going on in the FBI, Counterintelligence Department, and that's true. William Priestap, how do you say his name? Priestap directly works for, of course, the second in charge of FBI. That would be, that's right, Andrew McCabe. And what did Priestap and Strzok do? We said from the beginning. They were running a counterintelligence operation against Trump to frame him. Well, we only used the word frame after we heard Joseph DiGenova, the new counsel that Trump has hired, who is, in fact, the general who's going to take up the charge against Mueller, and then hopefully charge his way right into the taking Jeff Sessions' job, or at least working as an attorney general, because he's one of those trained and effective and feared attorneys in Washington, D.C. So Trump made a very big move that way. We'll talk about that in a minute. Probably Trump will, no doubt, DiGenova will simply tell Mueller, Trump's not talking to you. As a matter of fact, we're going to sue you, just like Manafort. Paul Manafort is suing Mueller because he has no foundation. We could go into that in a minute. Let's go back to McCabe, because I'm not done saying, that's right. That's Andrew McCabe. Then there's the Horowitz investigation into DOJ, FBI partisanship. Hello, those who think that Michael Horowitz is a white hat, you might want to wake up now, because if that were the case and crimes were committed, Horowitz is bound by law to bring all crimes immediately to his boss. Immediately. None of the funny play that the DOJ and FBI entrap people with, and all those stings and all the manipulation of the witnesses and trying to get someone to... No, wrong. The Inspector General is there to find crimes. And by the way, the office of the the office of the special counsel or special investigator can only be duly created once a crime has been found. No crime was ever found. It's not duly constituted. And that's what DiGenova is saying. This is not only a frame job with the dossier. Remember, who was in charge of the dossier? That would be Bruce Orr, who was part of the small group. The small group was in the Department of Justice, National Security Department, where the three top people have now quit after the dossier scam came to light. They ran out. James Baker, the lawyer for the FBI, he ran out. And, the chief counsels, they always run out because they can always say, client attorney privilege. They usually get out of this stuff. But we said from the beginning that Comey's bunk buddies, which was McCabe and his gang, including Priestap, Strzok, and now we know Page and the whole rest of the gang, what were they really doing? That was McCabe running a counterterrorism attack during the election. And that's what the Papadopoulos attack was. But there was other attacks going on, as you can find in the 28 treasonous acts of Comey, where he used Carter Page, who was previously a Russian, a spy for he was an asset for the FBI, used as a spy against the Russians. Carter Page he wasn't even on the Trump team. And then he used Felix Sater, his number one guy, who is a Russian, but he's an American now, who he uses, and he used again and again. Then there's Franklin Foer, and then there was Sergei Milyan Pachenko. Pachenko. No, that's not his name. Sergei Milyan. I forget his last name, but he doesn't use his last name. Anyway, the point is, it was Comey doing that. But hey, slow down. McCabe was there the whole way. He's a cheerleader, man. He was in on it. Comey named him as his inner group repeatedly. He named McCabe as being part of the conspiracy that went in and, for instance, reported a one-page executive summary on the dossier to Trump. Completely all lies, but in the one page it said the dossier was salacious and unverified. But McCabe said that the FISA warrants, both for Papadopoulos, for what we call the Carter Page dossier, Title 1, FISA 702, Title 1 warrant on Carter Page, McCabe himself said, without that we wouldn't have got one. Well, remember what that was, folks. That wasn't the one they were using before, the George Papadopoulos connection to Russia, which was at the counterintelligence that really started with John Brennan. That's the reason Brennan's out there saying insane things, threatening the president. That's the reason Samantha Power, who unmasked almost as much as anybody, well, maybe equal to Lisa Monaco, who it's now coming out that she, as Obama's Homeland Security advisor, unmasked all these people. Because why? It was a conspiracy. But I like the legal word framing. It was a frame up. Both the Carter Page Russian dossier, frame up. That was Comey's. The George Papadopoulos, that was really ran by McCabe. It was started with the CIA, then it went to the FBI counterintelligence, and it was really headed by Bill Priestap. And we said from the beginning, Betsy, that the second in charge of the FBI counterintelligence department will take the fall. That was Peter Strzok.
That's it?
No.
I'm just kidding.
You must be kidding. I'm only getting warmed up.
Oh, I know people on the other side of listening to this will understand.
Andrew McCabe? Andrew McCabe was there in training when Mueller took the yellow cake uranium enriched in America from our own mines through the new enrichment plant in Eunice, Mexico, to prove to Putin that when he comes over here and uses our new taxpayer paid for uranium enrichment plant to make him uranium, to make him money, was good enough for him. That was Mueller, who personally delivered it for Hillary Clinton, for CFIUS, and it was who? Andrew McCabe, who hid it from then on for 10 years and brought finally Vadim, what's his name? Mikarin, and the 10 female Russian spies, probably all named Natasha, or at least Natalie, or something, But one of them, before even being really interrogated, proudly admitted to the world, and when she got home, admitted to the world, that she had a direct connection to Hillary Clinton. In other words, she had Hillary Clinton's password, which was probably my password, just like John Podesta's password was password.
Okay, so where do these senior executive service employees fit in all of this? Or is that something you don't want to talk about today?
Andrew McCabe is a senior executive service member. That's the reason we're shining the spotlight on the shadow government. We've already revealed the SES, and tonight I think we're going to discuss this with Michael McKibben from Leader Technologies and the astounding discoveries that you and your team have now brought forward and put upon Truth News Headlines, which is bigger than any dump of anybody, WikiLeaks or whatever you want.
Yeah.
And it just so happens it's in time. It was a response to you and Americans for Innovation.
Yeah.
creating a searchable database called the Plum Book, because the Plum Book was in a bunch of pieces, so you couldn't look up who the 10,000 members of the SES were. They're the criminal shadow government. When they say deep state, this is the deep state. There's deep state elite. This is the deep state bureaucracy. These are the corporate scum parasite who have been placed there under the claims in 1978 when they rewrote the Civil Service Reform Act. What happened was they privatized a secret column, and that on their symbol, which is a keystone, is a column. That column is the fifth column. That is the enemy within. It says it right in their symbol. They have a flag. They have training that is like unto the FBI and CIA indoctrination training. It's right there in Virginia.
Yeah, they have their own training center.
They have their own union. Yeah. They get paid starting at the highest paying level in the government, what is called the general schedule from GS1 through 15. They come in at above 15. Their starting pay generally after general benefits is the pay of the vice president. So and then it goes up into millions and no one knows what they get paid because they hide it. And every year they get a raise. And it's almost impossible to fire them.
They're like bottom scummers, right?
They are appointees.
Bottom feeders.
Yes. Some arise out of the ranks. Now, when we say SES, the Senior Executive Service, remember, there's also the Senior Intelligence Service, which actually is in the NSA, which we just found documents. Well, let us say many people wish to join the efforts of the Conclave and of Aim for Truth and Betsy and her team. So many people are sharing things with us and showing us things. So we now have some of the biggest dumps that you've ever seen in your life of FOIA information that is completely government documents demonstrating that this organization exists, what they do, how they came into existence, the way that no rules apply to them, the way that some of them make millions of dollars a year because they get presidential awards or presidential recognition, which actually has then specifically tied to them through their yearly performance review, which always gives them a raise and never fires anybody. The only time anybody was fired, this was started in 1978, and it was basically a corporatization. It was a corporate attack on the U.S. government to put in place bureaucrats who would basically maintain the status quo with the uniparty system, following whatever the lobbyists are willing to pay for, because these people are trained in their paramilitary training in Virginia. They are trained to work with corporations. Their first training is how they need to have government agencies interact with corporations. This is a corporate imperialistic takeover of the American Republic.
You know, I think it's even more than that, because when I was reading over the materials, I felt it's like a cult.
It is a cult. They have their own flag, their own ceremonies. You get their own awards. You get badges. The whole thing.
Satanists in there and all these pizza things. You know what I'm saying?
Now, some of them rise up through the ranks, but when they do, if they want to enter the highest level of the executive service, which is called also the executive service or the executive service agency, or many different names. There's about 10 to 12 different branches of the SES, but they all are under one umbrella. They have one union, one training, and one voice. And that voice is stop anyone's agenda that wasn't the agenda of who appointed you. The last time we were able to check, 8,000 of the 9,000 SES members a year or two ago were all Obama appointees. During his 8-year administration, he got rid of about 4,000 of them. There were about 7,000. He got rid of about 4,000, anyone who wasn't on his team. He put in another 4,000, and then in 2015 to 2018, he wrote an executive order that says it needs to expand in all realms, even the NSA, even the military. And this proves our point, which we have been saying for years. There is a war between the intelligence agencies. We now have the documents to prove that. Michael Hayden, in fact, it was a corporate takeover of the NSA that caused many of these intelligence problems. And for the CIA, which had already had a corporate branch, which we call the rogue CIA. That is basically who this is. This is the corporate inner group that goes through a certain type of training. Really, it's an indoctrination. And even Obama in his early years went through the SES. Christopher Wray's in the SES. Andrew McCabe is in the SES. We hired Rex Tillerson, I believe, under the tenets of the SES because he needed to be paid much more than anybody. When Carter, and I'm sorry to have to say this for those of you who like him, he was completely controlled by the CIA. His money for his election came from BCCI, a Pakistani intelligence bank, directly working with what we call the rogue CIA, or the corporate CIA, which has about 2,000 companies, dummy companies, holding companies, which are some of the richest companies in the world, by the way. And we have explained many times how they have come into being, but that's not to be talked about here. But that we would call the corrupt CIA. Then there's the people are calling it the deep state. Don't call it the deep state. You don't know what that means. Call it the shadow government that is being paid through the SES, the SIS, the SEA, the ESA, the PLA, the PRES, and all the rest of them. Every 56 agencies in the federal government, 54 of them are controlled at the top by executives, many layers of executives. Now let me just pan this out for you. Jeff Sessions put one lawyer on the case of, what was it recently? It was so stupid. I have actually forgot what he actually said that lawyer was to do. One lawyer outside of D.C. was going to come and look at the biggest issue going on there. One lawyer. He appointed let one FBI agent go to look at Imran Awan.
And he was a rookie. Brand new, first year. So we have, one lawyer being appointed. Do you know how many people work under Jeff Sessions? About 125,000. Okay, let me repeat that. Jeff Sessions has about 115, 125, depending upon the year. Trump let a bunch of them go. He's got over 100,000 people, and he puts one lawyer on it? Well, that's probably because whoever's managing him from the SES or whatever they're called at the State Department, the Department of Justice, told him, stand down.
And as a conclave member said to me when I made the joke, not the joke, I said, he had to answer to his SES handlers. And he said, you mean his many layers of SES handlers? Layers.
We must extract this out of our system. It runs outside of the Constitution, the rule of law. It's there to thwart the will of the people, if not outright overthrow the government of the United States.
So I ain't done with Andrew McCabe. Horowitz was supposed to be checking partisanship between the DOJ and FBI, and you're telling me that those text messages alone, and by the way, Horowitz had 100, what did he have? He had 10,000 of the 50,000 before they were redacted. Do you realize that they removed all the sex talk, anything related to their personal lives, though it was on an FBI paid for phone, and it was planning and conspire. It was planning to overthrow an election and conspiring to overthrow a president, and yet we don't get to see the personal remarks. Not even the congressmen get to see the attachments or the redacted. And specifically, the DOJ said, we have redacted all names of SES members.
They actually said that.
Yes, they did.
Yes.
I think it was Bob Smith, who was probably an SES member at DOJ, wrote instead of Rod Rosenstein, the response to Congress saying what those 372 text messages that they were allowed to give out, but, oh, by the way, that got lost, and all the ones during the time when they were conspiring in the secret society, the operation to impeach Trump, when they were stealing President-elect Trump's entire records from the time of the transition that was stolen by Andrew Weissman working for Mueller underneath who? The direction of the Department of Justice underneath who? Mr. Magoo. And who was there? Who was there during the interview with Flynn and the interview with Huma Abedin, Cheryl Mills, Hillary Clinton, that was Strzok? And what did Strzok tell them that his boss, Andrew McCabe, told him to do? Destroy the computers and smash the Blackberries. Did I get it right this time?
Yeah.
The Blackberries. destroy evidence. We have that. That's a fact. Who was it that rewrote Comey's exoneration of Hillary before Andrew McCabe ordered Strzok to go interview her, write field notes, come back, write 302s, and then change those 302s so that they would agree with the exoneration changes in Comey's speech exonerating Hillary, which got Loretta Lynch off of making a judgment about one of the biggest criminal activities in American history that she deemed the matter. Not even a security breach, not an espionage breach, not pay for play, which is what it was. And by the way, I always say, and I never finish, how was it they had it? Anyone who paid for weapons through the State Department while Hillary Clinton was there, donated to her, and then got their weapons, and then got access to her computer so that they would know where she was, what she was doing, where her agents were, so that they could kill Ambassador Stevens in Benghazi because she gave out the location on her server. She gave out locations on her BlackBerry, top secret information about agents in foreign countries in that country on her BlackBerry. While she was there, she killed people and we're doing nothing about it. She should be put in Gitmo. I just realized that. We can get her for the deaths because we now have, and we know that it's been collected by the NSA, and we know people who have it, and we have the emails coming out, the 33,000 emails, which we've already seen some of them, which already show her complicit with basically telling Stevens where to be, giving out his location, Ambassador Stevens in Benghazi, and basically giving no support whatsoever, and then telling the enemy where he was. We know this to be a fact, and then we know that she was paid $100,000 for taking those Stinger missiles over to Syria through Israel and Lebanon. This is all documented. So when all of this comes out and the spotlight is shown, we're going to see why that can happen, because 8 of the 9,000 people in control of our government as status quo bureaucrats who are being paid more money than anybody else in the civil service because the corporations came in and said executives were better than civil servants who rise up through knowing their job. And by the way, these executives, they rotate between the 54 agencies they're in control in. And this also looks exactly like what happens with the judges that have rotated in and out of the federal courts in relationship to the dossier, the FISA requests, Contreras, and Contreras being a friend of Strzok, Judge Leon being a friend of Podesta. These are just rotations from the top of fixed courts, fixed administrative councils, fixed administrative procedures, and people who are running as a buffer and as interference for the person who put them in place, and that would be Field Marshal General Barry Soetoro.
Yeah, right. No, I wanted to say, you see, these SES employees, they don't have to have the skills. What they are there for is their loyalty to Obama. In fact, not only do they not have to have the skills, they don't even have to complete a background check the way everybody else does. We pointed out the things that they don't have to answer. They don't have to tell you who you've been associating with, where you were born, your citizenship. Now, did you tell me that Obama was an SES person at one time?
Early on.
Well, there you go. So he didn't have to tell you where he was born, what is his citizenship, right?
Well, that's because Sidney Blumenthal, who couldn't get a top secret security clearance, got a top secret security clearance because he became an SES member. All you have to do, go to the search, look in the plum book, and you're going to see that John Podesta was an SES member. You're going to see the biggest crooks in our news today were all at one point SES members, indoctrinated exactly as you said in a paramilitary organization that is globalist.
Totally cult.
This is a cultish, globalish, greedy group of people all getting theirs off the top. They get extraordinary amounts of money. They get extraordinary deals in their payroll packages, in their insurance packages. They get the golden parachutes and everything imaginable. They can't even be fired. Nobody. As a matter of fact, here's what happens. Each year, 500 fixers, and those are the real deep staters, big names, they sit and they give out awards to give every SES member a raise, though they don't even speak to them. And what are they looking at? Recommendations of their subordinates. Now, if you know your boss is going to fire your rear because you don't give them, because you have to put your name on your recommendation, you don't give them a recommendation to give them a raise, you're going to be fired by somebody who doesn't even know what you're doing, doesn't even know what agency you're in, because they rotate like musical chairs, and they get a raise, though the group of 500 looking at them don't even speak with them. This is all in government records. We have so many records to prove this, that when people write books in the deep state, they're going to have to write a second book on the shadow government, because that's what we're calling this. This is the exposure of the corporate, parasitic, shadow government, bureaucratic, status quo, uniparty, greedy pigs. I'm sorry, I might have said something inappropriate there, so let me just go a meow and say I really love kittens. And I love blue tick hounds.
No, it's called blue tick coonhounds.
I know they're called blue tick coonhounds, but I like to be a pointer myself. I point, and then those blue ticks go in, and they will get those birds.
Well, you are in the weeds now. Is there anything else you want to say before we close?
I ain't done with Andrew McCabe. Are you kidding? I've only scratched the surface. Andrew McCabe was in on 911. Andrew McCabe was in on Waco. Andrew McCabe investigated the Boston bombers, that anybody could take the video that was available that day and see that it was completely rigged. He was in on those Chechnyan bombers who he allowed into this country. He was in on allowing MS-13 members out of jail personally. He personally went to the jail to personally, and we have pictures of it, escort MS-13 members with rags over their heads so we wouldn't see their faces out of jail. 3 days later, Seth Rich was murdered by MS-13 members. And then I just was told today, and this shocked me, but I'm told every day stuff that just blows my mind. 3 MSM members, and it looks like the very one which has been named as the person, got into a gunfight with the FBI a few blocks away from where Seth Rich was murdered, the night that he was murdered, and they were all 3 killed by FBI. And then, as we all know, the FBI cruiser near there, just a few blocks from Seth Rich's murder, had its trunk opened, and the impervious, cache of guns in the back that can't be removed from the vehicle was completely removed, including the iron box that held them. And just so happens that a whole bunch of FBI weapons were just disappeared that night. At the same time, the MS-13 members were killed. And we have people who have said they have seen the film from the neighbor, from the store across the street that saw Seth Rich murdered by 3 MS-13 members. And so we have all this, and the FBI has Seth's laptop. And now there is a movement and people doing FOIAs and actually a legal action against the Washington, D.C. Police Department. And don't get me started about the woman who was in charge of the investigation and the doctors. Don't even get me started on that. But let's just say that they're trying to get that laptop. And if they they want to know where it is and why the FBI says they never took it. Well, when that's found, you're going to know the truth. But Kim.com is also coming out against SES and against Highlands Forum and other such things, because, folks, the spotlight is being shown upon these people. So anytime you want to see some big fancy pants who has a straight government job, put their name in the Plum Book search, and you'll find out they're being paid exorbitant amounts of money, and they're SES, and they're part of the overthrow of our republic. And the only way they can get out, President Trump, please, this is what you need to do.
And you very rarely state it like that. You always suggest.
Only once, and it's this issue. I've suggested many things. You simply need, you can't fire them. You need to let it dissolve from the top by not funding it. You need to simply have a lawyer look at the fact that in 1978, that law is illegal. It allowed for the corporate takeover of the civil service of America by people who don't even have to answer the question whether they're an alien or not. Many of these people are aliens. They have dual citizenships. And here's the other thing I'm going to tell you respectfully, Mr. President. We are soon, well, we now have already out enough evidence to put SES out of business in all of its branches. But we have requested that you continue Michael Flynn's demand that the corporate takeover of our intelligence community end. All corporate intelligence needs to end. Michael Flynn is right. Bring him back. Put him in a key position. Put Joseph DiGenova as the new Attorney General once he closes down the Mueller investigation. We would recommend that. We know that you're probably going to audit the Fed and other such things. But what is absolutely crucial is that SES must be defunded by looking at the fact that the law in 1978 that Jimmy Carter and the CIA wrote is illegal. Because of the following. It allowed foreign lobbyists to take over government bureaucratic positions. And we're going to show you that in some new things we're going to reveal, which is Serco. Serco is the British government. And they own our information systems like the tentacles of an octopus wrapping around its prey, sucking its blood out. These parasites are at a corporate level, so you need to ask the question, well, then who is driving the SES? That would be Serco. That would be the corporate, what we'd call, basically the military contractors who don't do bids, like Lockheed Martin and Boeing and Raytheon and so on and so forth. It's easy. We've written it. If you want to know who it is, we've named them in who is the military-industrial complex. We name these things. We don't talk conspiracies. Who's the deep state? Nobody knows, but I'll tell you what, we know who the shadow government is, and we know Andrew McCabe's part of it, and we know that unfortunately, if Michael Horowitz named Andrew McCabe as a leaker on all anyone will say is about the Clinton Foundation, we assume it's the APCO worldwide connection to Jonathan Weiner. Jonathan Weiner, who came out, who was Hillary's right-hand man, who was connected to Uranium One through APCO worldwide, absolutely in each other's pocket. He came out, admitted all of this. It's all coming out. That's the three reasons the three heads of the Department of Justice National Security Division all beat feet. They all jump ship. That it's revealing, and Horowitz is not going to do much because he would have already revealed that Comey, that Brennan, that Clapper were all leakers. It was absolutely institutionalized, the leaking. And to say he's only going after one person, and that is the person that they're now going to make the sad person who doesn't get his retirement, believe me, he got paid a lot of money under the table for Uranium One. That much I'll lay a nickel on, and I can name exactly where they can look to find it. That doesn't take any intelligence whatsoever. Andrew McCabe, we do not have to worry about him. Let me tell you, just like we don't have to worry about Comey, because when he's not the director making $145,000 a year, he's making $10 to $100 million a year, just like Mueller's doing, just like Andrew Weissman is doing right now. Remember, the Office of Special Counsel or Special Investigator, because they are all SES members, get to spend $100 million a year without even asking. They can get more if they ask, for each of their special counsel investigations per year. $100 million. When the fake SES laws took over the civil service in 78, the laws, which then became regulations for the Office of Special Investigator or Special Counsel, were twisted up by Janet Reno so they could do anything. They don't have to answer to anybody. So in 2016, a law was passed to say, yes, inspector generals can look at every single special investigator investigation. But Sally Yates, who was right there along with those same people who knew all about the dossier, she was up to her eyeballs in all of that. She stood up against Trump, got fired. Andrew Weissman said, go for it, Sally Yates, just like Samantha Power said, go for John Brennan 2 days ago. Yeah, why? Because they know they're going to go down permanently. This is the end of them. Trump, following the rule of law, ends the corporate parasitic takeover through the SES and all of its branches. So Andrew McCabe is the lowest scum on the face of the earth. If you get me started, I'm going to show you how he's connected to Susan Rice and everybody else and the death of 4.5 million Sudanese and on and on and on. But the point is, Don't feel sorry for him one second. This is the spotlight on the shadow government. It's coming to an end slowly, but Trump is doing all the right things. So we salute you, Mr. President.